My name is Jennifer Naris. I'm Ryan Naris's wife. I hated mobile home parks. This is my story.
Warning. This podcast features the truth about owning and operating mobile home parks. The following program is not designed to be sexy. It will not hype you up on MHPs. Rather, this is a raw take on this industry and how you find your own path to success. Welcome to MHP IRL, Mobile Home Parks in Real Life, with your host, Ryan Naris.
Ryan announced one day in 2015 that he was going to invest our money in mobile home parks and become an entrepreneur. He didn't ask me. He told me. I felt forced, scared, and angry. I couldn't understand why Ryan wanted to take almost all our liquidity and invest it in an undesirable, unattractive, unsafe, crime-filled trash can. Great. Ryan wanted to risk everything we had, our money, fancy graduate degrees, and all the life plans we had made. I found myself screaming on the inside every day in the beginning, but as it turns out, my concerns and emotions then weren't the hard part. In fact, those were the easy parts. Fast forward almost 3 years later, and here's my view of mobile home parks. The good, the bad, and the ugly. First, I think it's important that I discuss my personality and Ryan's. We're very similar individuals. Type A, strong-willed, grit-driven, bullfighting alphas. We both want things our way and on our terms. Because of this, we've both accomplished all the things we've set out to do, if nothing else because we're too damn stubborn to give up. You may be thinking, well, that sounds good. You're both hardworking, accomplished individuals. But what happens when we have differing opinions about something? And furthermore, what if that something has the potential to change our lives? When Ryan first brought me the idea of mobile home parks, he had already decided that he was going to make the change to entrepreneurship. By the time he brought this to my attention, he wasn't asking if I was okay with trying it. He was telling me that he was doing it no matter what. At the time, we weren't married yet, and we lived over 500 miles apart. See, Ryan took his MBA internship with Carnival Cruise Lines in Miami, Florida. He loved statistics and operations, and we agreed that that was the best opportunity for him to learn more about operations and hopefully get a great job offer. I stayed behind in small-town Winston-Salem, waiting for him to return, and planning our wedding by myself. All the while working at a job that was basically a time filler until we moved for whatever Ryan's next career opportunity would be. I'm sure you can imagine my surprise when he called home one day to tell me that he decided he wanted to take all the life plans we had made and turn them upside down. Remember how I told you we're both grit-driven bullfighters? The next 2 years were something like that giant game of tug-of-war I played at camp as a kid, except it was just me on one side of the rope and Ryan on the other. And we were both just too damn stubborn to fall into the mud puddle and concede to the other. At this point, you're probably thinking what Ryan's business partner said to Ryan. She's your wife. Shouldn't she be more supportive of the things that you want? You're absolutely right. I should have been more supportive. And there are still days in the present where I need to be more supportive. My hope from this episode is that you will learn 3 things from me. 1, make sure you're ready for all the side effects of making a change like this in your life. I'm sure you've thought long and hard about how your professional life might be impacted. Don't forget about the effects it will have on your personal life. 2, you have to be willing to risk it all. Not just your time, your money, and your lifestyle. You also need to ask yourself if you are prepared to put your personal relationships under stress and at risk. Is your marriage or relationship strong enough to withstand the tug-of-war that will most certainly be ongoing if your spouse isn't 100% agreeable to you becoming an entrepreneur? And 3, be patient. Not only with your spouse, but also with yourself. I think one of the reasons Ryan and I had so many issues when this adventure began is because we were newly married and going through all the struggles that come along with that. If you're married and listening to this, you know that the first 1 to 2 years of marriage are full of challenges. Think about a paper grocery bag. The more you place into it, the more stress is put on those flimsy paper handles. There's a limit to how much you can place in the bag before the handles rip off, the bag falls on the ground, and all your stuff in the bag becomes a giant mess. Think of your marriage like the grocery bag. and your life like the groceries. Mobile home parks add more weight. Be gentle when you add to the bag, and be always aware of the weight before you try to pick up the bag and run out of the store. Be patient. Perhaps you need a double bag. Add a little more strength to what's carrying all that weight. Remember that you're not carrying the weight alone. There were numerous times when both Ryan and I could have done more to strengthen our marriage, but instead we just added more weight. The other reason we had issues is because we were both so strong-willed. We both like to be in control, especially when it comes to things that have an effect on our lives. I'm a control freak. I'll be the first to admit it. There were times when I felt like the risks that Ryan was taking with our money and our lives were completely out of my control. I felt like my opinions on the choices he made were falling on deaf ears, and this drove me crazy. On the other hand, the fact that I wasn't on board with what Ryan wanted drove him crazy. He felt like every decision he made was being scrutinized by the one person who should be supporting him in the background. There were plenty of instances when all he needed was a cheerleader, and instead he got negativity and an attitude. If you are a spouse listening to this, I want to draw your attention to the next few things I'll say. They're important. First, if your partner is thinking of investing in 1 or 2 mobile home parks passively, this podcast is not directed to you, although I think anyone could learn from my experience. If your partner is seriously discussing changing his or her life to become an entrepreneur and take huge risks with their time and money, whether it's with mobile home parks or something else entirely, this podcast may be exactly what you need to hear. You're probably waiting for me to provide you with a golden ticket, that one perfect piece of advice that will give you enough clarity of mind to solve any issues you're having with your partner's professional or life choices. I'm not going to give you that. Come on, you know that's not how life works. However, I will tell you what helped give me clarity, and although it may seem simple, it took me almost 2 years to arrive at this conclusion. Remember how I told you that I'm a type A, grit-driven bullfighter control freak? It wasn't until last year that I became acutely aware that we all need to feel like we have one thing at all times. Choices. We all need choices, the freedom to choose what happens to us, because after all, that is a major part of how we feel in control of our lives. I needed this more than some, because I'm so strong-willed. I think part of the reason I fought so hard against my husband becoming an entrepreneur in the mobile home park industry is because I felt like I had no choice in the matter. I felt like the path Ryan had chosen for us was of his making, and I was simply along for the ride. Some days it felt like I was kidnapped and shoved in the car. It dawned on me one day, after one of the many arguments we had gotten into about mobile home parks, that I did have a choice. I needed to choose between fighting for every little thing I wanted or fighting for my marriage. I had the power to choose between strengthening our marriage or weighing it down. Part of growing as an individual and as a spouse is learning what really matters. I realized that I didn't want to risk our marriage over the little things I was fighting for. Supporting Ryan was what really mattered. Right, wrong, or indifferent, it took me a long time to connect supporting Ryan to the strength of our marriage. Once I started focusing on supporting Ryan and fighting for our marriage, I saw myself opening up more and more to mobile home parks. I guess I hadn't opened up to the idea fully because I had been so busy fighting for what I wanted that I hadn't considered fighting for Ryan too. Sounds simple, right? For me, it wasn't. I'd like to finish my portion of this podcast by coming full circle and addressing my original guttural reaction to mobile home parks 3 years ago. It took time for me to realize that mobile home parks are a good investment if done right. Ryan is slowly securing our retirement, and possibly even our financial freedom sometime in the future. However, he works hard, very hard, every day, and there are no guarantees that the sacrifices we're making today will ever pay off. Sacrifices like limiting our current financial status, putting off starting a family, relying on my employability to pay our bills, and the fact that Ryan travels for his business almost all the time now. In my opinion, mobile home parks are still not pretty. Are some of them trash cans? Yes. Are all of them trash cans? No. As it turns out, not all of them are crime-filled either. In fact, many of them are filled with good, hardworking people who are just supporting their family. While at the beginning of this journey, I found myself looking at every mobile home park with a sick face, now I get excited at the possibility of every new deal Ryan considers. Because with each acquisition Archimedes Group makes, Ryan and I get a little bit closer to the lifestyle and the financial freedom that we both hope for. Make no mistake, things are not rainbows and butterflies now. No marriage is perfect. No business is perfect. No one really ever won that game of tug of war. We are still both very strong-willed individuals who fight for what we want, except now there's no rope. We both sort of fell into the mud puddle together, and every day we do our best to understand each other's point of view. If you're listening to this podcast and you're the one considering making mobile home parks your career, I'll let Ryan walk you through his point of view and the things he's learned about marriage and making personal sacrifices. My name is Jennifer Naris, and I no longer hate mobile home parks.
Thank you. I thought that was going to be a whole lot more brutal, but I'll say this, Jennifer. There is no one I'd rather be in the mud with. Look, what I did to you was completely unfair. I thrusted you into a huge financial risk without even giving you a say. Then, when I didn't have your buy-in, I tried to persuade you rather than listen. I'm happy to say that now I love you more every single day that passes, and this journey that I thrust us into has really made us stronger. I stress-tested our marriage, but ultimately I put us in a much better financial and marital situation. Well, really, we both did. I realized that marriage is about disagreeing well and growing together. We agreed to share our lives together and to travel this journey that is life together. Where I first thought you just needed convincing about the idea of mobile home parks, I now realize you were just holding me accountable for the vows that I made on our wedding day.
Well, thank you for saying that. It was unpleasant at first. I think the way that you brought this idea to my attention and into our lives was not the best way to do it, but it still worked out. You can say
it sucked.
It sucked. But but it still worked out. I mean, we're working out the kinks, but things are going well now. I think for anybody that's listening to what we experienced, maybe they can learn a lesson from listening to us about, honestly, just how to present ideas and being willing to understand that in marriage there's really no winning and losing. What this has taught me is that it's more about what's important to you and what battles do you want to pick.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the main point, I think, out of all of this is you got to pick your battles, because I knew that this was going to make me happy, and I love what I do. And, I totally pulled the guilt trip many a times. I love this and this makes me happy. Do you not want to see me happy?
Right. I can't tell you how many times I was a dream killer.
Oh, that's right. I used to call you dream killer. Wonderful.
This is just an honest discussion. I think people need to hear it. There are times when marriage is an ugly animal, but I think of the reason that a lot of marriages or business decisions or any big changes in your life don't work is because you're not willing to step outside of yourself, challenge what's going on and risk things.
Yeah, and I think social media makes a totally distorted view of the world, right? The Instagram and Facebooks give you a highlight reel of the best parts of your life, and they don't show the behind the scenes stuff. So when I came to you with this idea of doing this podcast with me, my goal here was to kind of show people what behind the scenes looks like. Like players scoring touchdowns, but they never see them struggling at the gym.
Right, right. I think too, if I could go back in time and articulate to you what it was that I wanted, I really just wanted more than anything for you to ask me what I wanted. Even if I knew that you probably weren't going to give it to me, for you to ask me, how would you like me to go about doing this? What do you think about this? What do you want to happen? Because even if I didn't get what I wanted, at least I knew that someone was listening to my concerns. So I think if you have a spouse that's giving you a hard time, like I gave Ryan a hard time, I don't want to say humor them, but do it. Just humor them. Ask them what they would want and how they would do it, and ask them how they're feeling. Because especially from a female perspective, a lot of times that's really all I really ever wanted, was to feel like my point of view and my perspective was not only heard, but respected.
Yeah, it's just empathy and strong listening skills. It's ultimately the same communication skills that you do your best to learn in your life.
And this is why one of my big things on my part of the podcast was to be patient, is because you'll find yourself having the same conversation over and over and over again, especially when your spouse still doesn't understand things like I did or still disagrees with things like I did. I must have asked Ryan the same questions 500 times, and I know it was really frustrating for him. But I think that's just how you work through things, is that you're willing to have those discussions over and over again. Whether it's with Ryan and his business partner talking through things all the time, or whether it's talking through things with your spouse. That's how you get through things. And
we do things differently than you do. You're really direct, a little more introverted than Ian and I. Were outgoing. We're on the phone and talk in circles and over again, which I know drives you nuts.
It does. Sometimes.
Most of the time, let's be honest. Come on. Well, I can't thank you enough for doing this. And the listeners, I really hope that you appreciate and really raw and honest take of what goes on here. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not interested in giving you guys a highlight reel. I want y'all to understand what you're getting into, because the singularity of thought in this industry really paints a distorted picture of the truth. And to make myself and my own wife vulnerable and really naked to the world and let you see all of our flaws, I really hope helps give you perspective. And for the wives listening here, it's unfair stress testing your marriage like I did to Jennifer. But ultimately, if you disagree well and you love each other, I mean, I think you'd agree with me, Jennifer, we came out of this situation loving each other even more than when we went into it.
Right. Like, if you want to find a way, you'll find a way to get through it and to be happy together. If that's really what you want, you'll make it happen.
Did my podcast help you? If so, I need your help too. So I can provide you with more helpful content, leave me a 5-star review. That 20 seconds of your time means the absolute world to me. There's really no better way to say thank you. Let's connect. Reach out to me on my website, www.archimedesgrp.com. Leave me a line with some feedback so I can better serve you, and I look forward to hearing from you.